In today's Farm Report, the deadline for spring crop sales is fast approaching. Rod Bain with the U.S. Department of Agriculture has more.
Farmers, if you grow spring crops, you have some important sales closing dates coming up for crop insurance products for this year. New ones created as part of the 2014 Farm Bill. First off, growers of spring crops and upland cotton in many Texas counties should take note.
Some regions are as soon as January 31st.
And USDA Risk Management Agency Administrator Brandon Willis says this closing date applies for both the supplemental coverage option and for upland cotton growers, the stacked income protection plan. But again, the January 31st sales closing date applies to many Texas counties. The rest of the nation will have some more time.
Some have February sales closing date, and some are the middle of March for some of your Midwestern crops.
The supplemental coverage option is a county-level policy endorsement covering a portion of the producer's deductible of their underlying multi-peril crop insurance. This applies to the following crops planted for the 2015 crop year.
Farmers who grow cotton, corn, soybeans, wheat, barley, rice, grain sorghum, those are the farmers who we have eligible, we have SCO out for this year. They should talk to their crop insurance agent and see if it's something that works for them.
Meanwhile, the Stacked Income Protection Plan, STAX, is an area-based revenue policy for upland cotton growers.
One of the major changes in the last Farm Bill was the movement from cotton's typical safety net, which was based upon a countercyclical price program, and moved it to crop insurance.
Now, to help you as growers make decisions on these new programs, Willis says there are online tools and apps now available.
We have online a crop insurance decision tool. This is a tool where a farmer can go online. They can look at these new options. They can put some numbers in for their county. They can look at yields, different prices, and they can come up with their own analysis of if things turn out how I expect, which program should I utilize and what levels of coverage should I purchase.
And as for the new mobile app,
it has essentially the same information, but obviously if you're out in the field and you want to run some numbers, a mobile app is the place to go.
Willis says producers should go to the RMA website, www.rma.usda.gov, to find more information about these programs, as well as online tools, apps, and maps to assist farmers in understanding coverage options. But when it comes time to make a decision,
really, I'd encourage farmers to talk to their crop insurance agent. Those are the professionals. They're the ones that know these programs inside and out.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Raw milk is one commodity that when it comes out of here, it's got to go out quickly, generally by tanker truck to the processors who have to turn it around quickly to get it to stores fresh daily. If that milk cannot be picked up from the dairies within a couple of days, it's got to be dumped at a big loss to the dairy producer. Now, put that scenario up into the Northeast, which is trying to dig out now from a huge blizzard.
We may have had some dumping, but I haven't at this point heard of any widespread dumping of milk because of not being able to get it picked up.
Bob Gray with the Northeast Dairy Farmers Cooperatives, he says road crews have done a pretty good job making roads to dairies at least passable pretty quickly. However,
some of our processing facilities could not open, and therefore milk had to be rerouted to other plants because those plants just weren't, available to have milk brought into them.
But all in all, Gray says it's been difficult this week for the Northeast dairy industry, but it could have been a lot worse.
That's exactly right.
In Washington, Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
The University of Minnesota Extension Service Office will be holding a pesticide training today. Dan Martins with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office talks about that workshop and others being put on by Extension.
I'm Dan Martins reporting for U of M Extension and Stearns, Benton, and Morrison counties. Save the date. That seems to be a popular postcard in the mail these days. So I'll offer a couple of save-the-date reminders of my own today and maybe talk a little more about a couple of these next time I'm on the air. In the meantime, watch for news releases and other sources of information about some of these events and take a closer look at things that could be useful to you. February, private pesticide applicator renewal workshops in our area include Wilmer on the 6th, Melrose the 10th, Cold Spring the 12th, Belgrade the 13th, Buffalo the 18th, Cambridge the 20th, and Foley the 27th. People who are renewing permits this year should have gotten a Minnesota Extension flyer in the mail early in January. The flyers are mailed by regions, so sometimes if you're on the edge of a region, there might be a workshop 30 or 40 miles the other direction that is actually closer to you. The written test is available at county extension offices now, and you can call to ask about having that mailed to you. The online test is also up and running now. Barriers to Bushels workshops are primarily about corn and soybean production practices and held at several locations, and a couple include some discussion about wheat. West and central Minnesota sites include Madison on Monday, February 23rd, Wilmer Wednesday, February 25th, Little Falls Tuesday, March 3rd, Fergus Falls Thursday, March 5th. The programs vary a little bit from site to site, but primarily looking at weed control, disease issues, fertilizer strategies, managing costs, and maintaining yields. For a little bit of a taste, at Little Falls, weed specialist Jeff Gonzalez will talk about managing weeds for the present while learning from the past and looking to the future. Weed herbicide resistance is one of the key issues that's becoming a greater problem. Corn agronomist Jeff Coulter will discuss managing inputs for corn for higher yields while controlling cost. Plant pathologist Dean Mavlik will talk about managing disease issues for corn and soybeans. Soil fertility specialist Dan Kaiser will focus on pop-up and starter fertilizer practices. Regional Extension educator Doug Holan will talk about where wheat might be a good fit with some of our crop rotations. And I'd like to point ahead to the Nitrogen Management Conference that will be held in St. Cloud on Friday, March 6th. The full day will run from 9 to 3:45. The morning program will include information about nitrogen markets, weather factors with Mark Seeley, work being done on irrigated corn nitrogen guidelines, and protecting water resources. There will be 3 sets of breakout sessions in the afternoon that give you a chance to hone in on topics most useful to you. These are all geared to what farmers are trying to accomplish on the farm. If you're not finding this information, call, and I'll get a flyer mailed to you. In Stearns, Benton, and Morrison counties, you can connect through your county extension office or get to where my desk is by calling 968-5077 if a local call to Foley, or 1-800-964-4929. I'm Dan Martins with U of M Extension, and I hope your January is wrapping up well.
Agricultural trade will be getting a lot of attention February 19th and 20th at the USDA's Outlook Forum in Arlington, Virginia. We'll be getting new ag export forecasts and trade outlooks for various U.S. commodities and customers, including China. USDA's acting chief economist Rob Johansson says the forum will feature 2 headliner trade sessions. First, a session with the chief U.S. ag trade negotiator, Darcy Vetter.
And of course, we've got a lot of interesting times right now in front of us looking at trade. We've got the TPP and the TTIP.
TTIP is that controversial trade agreement the U.S. is trying to negotiate with the European Union amidst strong differences on things like beef hormones, biotech, even the names of food products. That's why Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack's special session should be really interesting.
The new EU Commissioner of Agriculture and Rural Development, Phil Hogan, will be joining the Secretary in a discussion on domestic and international agriculture. Oh, that'll be great to see that session.
We reporters, of course, are hoping for some friendly fireworks in that one. For more information on the Outlook Forum, set your web browser to look for USDA Outlook Forum, and you should get what you need. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Soil health is important for producers who want to maximize crop yield. Rod Bain with the U.S. Department of Agriculture talks about a voluntary program, also referred to as the 590 standards.
Farmers, you are probably well aware of the voluntary nutrient management standards, called 590 standards, to help you in balancing and maximizing the economic and ecological impacts of soil nutrients and soil health. USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service oversees the 590 standards, and Wayne Honeycutt of NRCS points out,
these really provide kind of the basic criteria for people to follow in order to achieve these plant growth and these environmental benefits.
Honeycutt acknowledges that there are individual state laws that require a state to modify 590 standards to fit with their regulations.
So there are some states that have more rigid restrictions, for example, on when manure can be applied, and others do not have those restrictions. And so that's where we kind of come into a situation where a given state nutrient management standard would differ from one state to the next just because of those state laws that they are trying to accommodate in it.
And regardless of how 590 nutrient management standards are applied on a state-to-state basis, Honeycutt says many farmers already follow these nutrient management practices, and in many cases, exceed them.
In many respects, a lot of the farmers are really pushing the envelope, capturing latest technologies. In some respects, we're needing to try to catch up to them.
State 590 standards are usually determined by land-grant university experimental stations serving that area. However,
we also can accommodate kind of evaluations of that, more of a fine-tuning of that by something we call adaptive nutrient management.
Honeycutt provides an example of this, which demonstrates the flexibility of 590 standards as part of an overall nutrient management plan.
If given soil type for a given crop in a given county, the land-grant university recommendation may be X. But we know that if that soil's down on the bottomland versus up or on the side slope or on the summit, then it could have different microclimates, even though it might even be the same soil series. Just some differences in those soil can influence nutrient availability. And so the adaptive nutrient management concept allows people to really kind of test, really essentially almost like in strip trials, you can think of it that way, their ability to kind of fine-tune that nutrient application.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
It's been a little over 2 years and 3 months since Hurricane Sandy slammed the East Coast in the deadliest and most destructive hurricane of the 2012 Atlantic hurricane season.
In response to Hurricane Sandy, there's been some proposals to do something called oyster texture.
Chris Nelson is with Bon Secours Fisheries.
It's kind of a cross between oyster and architecture, and it's to use oysters in breakwaters that would be out away from the beach, but it would tend to buffer the shoreline from the effects of the storm surge associated with a hurricane.
It's along the same line of living shorelines that are being done in the Gulf.
It's something that we support, particularly if those same living shorelines can be harvested, but we also understand the need to do pure restoration.
For example, helping the ecosystem. For USDA Radio, Susan Carter, Washington, D.C.